Welcome everybody. We are here today with Alessandro Metlica and Marco Malvestio. Welcome, guys. They are working together in two different works, actually, but the one is the supervisor, the other is the fellow, as we decided to call them. Alessandro, would you start to tell us what is your work about? What is your research field?
Yeah, I'm an associate professor in comparative literature, and I'm the PI of a starting grant project entitled Republics on the Stage of Kings. My field of expertise is the representation of power through art and literature in early modern Europe. Actually, when we talk about power in early modern times, we are not just talking about the political and social matter, but also the multimedia experience that was created in order to sustain this power. Power was a comprehensive audiovisual expression pivoting on several media, writing, music, visual arts, and performance. And my research project studied this text and images in order to understand how power was staged in these centuries. And more specifically, the idea that led to my ERC grant was to analyze this power not only as something focusing on the figure of the king, but actually in Europe at the times we also had republican states, states without king to celebrate, without princes to honor. So my ERC project tried to understand this problem by gathering a comprehensive overview of the displays of state power in early modern republics, not only with respect to Venice, but also considering the Dutch Republic, so the Netherlands, and other republics existing as well in those times, Genoa, Lucca, and Ragusa. To what extent does the absolutist framework influence the display of republican ideals such as freedom, equality, and the common good? And how may the rhetorical devices of such culture, devices realized once again to extol the power of the king, to apply not to someone, the king indeed, but rather to something, the republic and republican virtues? And well, the research team worked on these questions by comparing different case studies from Amsterdam to Venice to Genoa and Lucca.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. I know it's not easy to sum up all the work of your big amount of studies you're carrying on. Marco, it's your turn now.
Yes, I am a Maurice Claudius Kakuri postdoctoral fellow. My project is a joint project with the University of Padua and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Alessandro is my supervisor here at the University of Padua, while in Chapel Hill I work with Serenella Iovino. And I work, the title of the project is The Ecology of Italian Science Fiction, and as the title suggests, I work on environmental concerns, ecological concerns in Italian science fiction from the early 1950s to the present. The early 1950s is more or less the beginning of science fiction as an autonomous genre in Italian literature. And I work on a corpus of often overlooked texts. I work on, magazines specialized in science fiction. I work on B-movies. I work on fanzines and so on. So a corpus that, again, has not been studied very much by Italian scholars in the past few decades. And, with this set of texts, I want to see how, a speculative genre, but based in reality as science fiction, addresses and conceptualizes and so on, the problems of the Anthropocene, the environmental changes that Italy went through after the Second World War, and more generally, how it helps us understanding and also contexting anthropocentrism, human exceptionalism, and so on and so forth.
We got that you came from different areas of studies, which
Very
at some point, very different. Okay, some point in contact they are there, but so Marco, I'm curious about how was your idea to call Alessandro to ask him to be your supervisor. How things started? Because
I studied in Padua. I got my PhD from the University of Padua. Then I went to work at the University of Toronto. But I wanted to base my project at the University of Padua because that's where I studied and so on. And I knew Alessandro. We knew each other because we were both students of the Galileiana, of the Scuola Galileiana di Studi Superiori. So I knew that he was an expert in the field of European grants. So when I decided to present and to apply for a Marie Curie fellowship, even though, of course, we studied different things, it was the first person that came to my mind. And in my opinion, especially in the context of a global fellowship like mine, with an outgoing phase in another university where you work with another supervisor that, in my case, is an expert in environmental studies and in eco-criticism, the fact that my Italian supervisor wasn't an expert in this field was not very much a problem. And I was actually looking for someone who knew how to deal with an application as complex as this.
Alessandro, I was wondering about some maybe soccer games or basketball games you played together, and then Marco came up with the idea. I don't know, it was maybe having some drink together, some kind of stuff. But I don't know if it's the right case. What was the first contact between you two?
Well, it's not that far from truth. I mean, the great thing about program as Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe now is that we are talking about research programs really looking for excellence. So when Marco firstly presented me his idea, I immediately knew that it was a very good idea, because I know frontier research, I'm a CPI after all, so I'm able to recognize a good project when I see one. And this was definitely the case. Of course, this wasn't my field of expertise, so we had to discuss this together. We also talk about this with experts like the ones that are now part of the project itself. But the main thing here is really the idea you're able to develop, how to question the disciplinary field and how to bring something new to the table. And in this case, even if I'm not an expert of science fiction or environmental studies, of course, I know more or less what happens in that field. And Marco presented really great ideas from a new point of view. And so actually, I was the one forcing him to apply for this scholarship, saying, "I'm quite sure you're gonna success because you have a good idea." And then I would like also to mention that actually we were able to find some good points in common, especially as far as dissemination is concerned, because of course I'm working on the Republic of Venice, so also the historical legacy of Venice, the cultural heritage that we have here in Veneto region. But once again, when you consider the situation from the perspective of the climate change and the environment studies, well, Venice is kind of a very, very famous example. So there's a part within the project that Marco developed that focuses particularly on Venice and on the image, the representation of Venice in arts and literature. Of course, we are talking in this case of the 20th century, of the science fiction, cinema, and literature. So it's not my field, but once again, the representation of Venice is a sort of a link between the two projects, and this allows us to focus on common objectives.
Was it, Alessandro, a little challenge for you, maybe also to, I don't know, maybe you have some, let's say, you have a little mindset when you approach your research field, and when some idea from the outside, let's say, come up, you have to rethink about some processes. Maybe, how is it your experience about that?
Well, I think that this is precisely the game we have to play if we want to make great frontier research. Mindset are there to be undermined, to be defied, and from this perspective, of course, supervising a project like the ones Marco is working on right now is also very useful for my research as well, because it allows me to question my topic of the research, so the Republic of Venice, from a different point of view, and also to build on different disciplinary areas. We are actually both in literary studies, so the discipline is quite the same, but since we approach it from very different point of views, this is really something that enrich my research job. And I think that for Marco is the same, but of course I'm not the one that I have to say that.
Well, we both work on, non-canonical texts, but as Alessandro said, the main help that he gave me when I was preparing my application was, well, first of all, his knowledge, his know-how in these kind of applications, but also for the dissemination activities of my fellowship. He suggested me to, propose to organize a festival/exhibition about Venice and, especially the environment of Venice in science fiction, in Italian science fiction. So in post-apocalyptic imagination, in dystopian imagination, and so on. And that was actually a great idea, and I think was a strong point of my application, because it created a strong link between, my proposed research and Alessandro's field of expertise, which is, of course, Venice, but also with the fact that his ERC group already organized similar events. It's not a point where our researches touch, but it is definitely a point on which we do collaborate a lot.
Thank you very much for these little insights. I think they are very useful for the people who wants maybe to approach or they have some ideas, maybe a little out of the field, not like the strict ones. And Marco, I have one last question for you. Since you are some like a let's say fresh researcher, the fresher here, let's say. And
that's for sure.
That's for sure. What is your suggestion to you may have for the people who are trying to set up a future for themselves like that, maybe using these tools like the Marie Curie Fellowship, the other funds that the European Union provides? What are your suggestions?
Well, I mean, first of all, my first suggestion would be take your time, because it takes time to write a strong proposal. It seems easy, it seems short, but it actually takes some time. And the second thing, and I think that it, kind of emerged in this discussion, is to choose supervisors not only on the basis of, the commonalities in the research, but also on their expertise with this kind of applications, because dedicated offices in universities like our Ufficio Ricerca Internazionale, are extremely useful tools, but of course they are a limited number of people that have to deal with a huge number of projects. But if you do have a supervisor that can actually help you straightening your project and highlighting its most important points and so on, that's really an extremely valuable tool.
Okay, so thank you, Alessandro and Marco, for sharing your experiences, and I think they will be inspiring for some people. Let's hope for a lot of people that can maybe also join us in Padova to be colleagues, researchers, and to help us finding out new interesting things as you do. So thanks again, and see you next time.
Thanks to you.
Thank you. Thanks.